If you're using Ollie Ops only, we have the ability for you to invoice your front of house within the system. You would use a different process if you're also connected to Ollie Order, unless you have serving tanks that you use in your front of house. We'll go over that scenario at the end of this video. To start though, if you are only using Ollie Ops, instead of having to invoice your front of house via QuickBooks online, you can do it right within Ops instead. To create your customer, go over to Customers and create a new customer. We allow for multiple customers in case you have multiple tasting rooms, or you could even break this down by which bar it's going to if you have multi-levels or an indoor and outdoor bar to keep even further track of where the beer is going. Once you create those customers, you can go in and create invoices. To create an invoice, go to the Invoice tab and hit New Invoice. You would choose which customer you want it to be invoiced to, your invoice at date, and then you can also put a due date as well if you'd like. You can then go in and add a new item to this invoice. All of your finished goods are in order of their name. So it goes by the product name, and then it goes by what the product type is, whether it's half barrel kegs, sixtels, or cases. You can search for a product to bring up what you have in stock, or you can also search for a batch number and pull up a certain batch as well. When you go and you choose a finished goods, you can see how much you have on hand and then what the cost of it is as well. This is going to be your cost of goods. You can go in and choose it, be able to choose the quantity that you want to sell. You can add a price to the product as well, or you can put it at zero. I always used to sell beer to the front of house at zero cost, but if you want to put a price to it, you'd be able to enter that here. At the end of this, you can also see what your cost of goods sold is. All this information also goes to a sales report that we'll go over at the end of this video. Besides finished goods, you can also go in and type in serving tank, and this will show all the beer that you have in your serving and bright tanks. I mentioned that you would only be using this if you have Ops only. However, if you have Ollie Ops and Ollie Order, but you are serving beer out of the serving tanks, you can handle all your serving tank sales with this invoice function. You would go in and choose which serving tank you want to sell out of, be able to choose how much beer was sold out of that serving tank the previous day by looking at your sight glass or pulling the information from your POS system. Again, you can choose to put a price to it or not. And then this quantity is going to be how much barrelage was sold. Similar to all of your finished goods, you'll also be able to see what your cost of goods sold was for this 0.25 barrels of beer. You can also put comments and footnotes into the invoice. When it's done, hit Create Invoice, and then all of that beer will get removed from your finished goods inventory or removed from your bright tank. If we go in and look at our serving tank, we can go into that batch, view the transactions, and see that the beer was removed via the invoices. Besides being able to do all this front of house invoicing, we also have a sales report that you can pull up. You can pull up any date range that you'd like to look at, be able to see what the customer is, or look at all of your customers, and be able to see all of the batches of beer that you sold, what the item was. If it's draft, that means it came out of a bright or serving tank, or if it was sixtels, halves, or cases. You can see what the customer's name was, how many units were sold. Again, if it's draft, this is going to be your barrelage. If it is kegs, this is going to show how many kegs or cases were actually sold. You'll be able to see your total volume as well in barrels, or whatever you have set up as your volume unit in your brewery settings. If you entered price, you can see what your total cost was that you sold, or revenue that you sold to the customer. And then you can also see a total running of your cost of goods sold. This information is great to pull at the end of the month, so you would be able to look at how much cost of goods sold you have versus how much revenue you have that was brought in via your POS system. You can also check your POS system and see how much beer was sold, turn that into barrels, and then be able to see this number at the end of the month and see how much loss you have going from your back of house to your front of house. I always like to mark beer as sold once we actually tap the beer or brought cases over to the retail section. The first month you do this, the numbers will be slightly off because you may have a half keg that's full, a keg that's all the way full because it just got tapped on the last day of the month, and kegs that are slightly empty. I always found that after 3 months, these numbers average out, and you can really use this sales report to look at how much beer you sold versus how much beer was actually tapped, and get a better handle on what's going on in your front of house. If you have any questions on how any of this works, please reach out to us.